You're listening to the #1 podcast for nonprofit leaders, getting your nonprofit fully funded. This is the Fundraising Masterminds Podcast. We're not doing this with every single person.
No.
This is specifically how to deal with the 20% who give 80% of your dollars.
That's right. People will say, isn't that anti-scriptural? Doesn't scripture say we treat everyone the same? In God's eyes, everyone is the same.
He wanted to get in touch with the people that could write $1 million check, but he went about it kind of the wrong way.
He made it sound like it was so easy to get $1 million check. He used to strike out for years until we set up a system where we cultivated relationships to be put in the position where he could easily ask them and they would say yes for money.
Well, welcome back to another episode of the Fundraising Masterminds Podcast. We are so excited that you are here with us today, and I've got my co-host Jim Dempsey with you.
Hey, Jason.
Thank you so much for tuning in. We got great content lined up for you today. We're going to be talking about how to transform your donor cultivation from a haphazard approach to a strategic approach.
Absolutely.
Really like the title of this one.
Yep.
So before we get into it, I have a couple things I want you guys to do. If you wouldn't mind subscribing to the YouTube channel, we've got weekly content coming out and we don't want you to miss any of it. And if you like this episode, please click the like button and please also write some comments. We would love for you to write any questions you may have that come up during this episode. We also, if you have any comments or anything that we missed or anything you can contribute to the conversation, we would love to hear it in the comments. Jim and I personally read every single comment and we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. Questions, anything you've got, put it out there.
Well, let's get into the topic today, Jim.
Okay.
We are talking about something that a lot of nonprofits struggle with, being haphazard.
Yeah, haphazard in their
communication,
approach.
right?
Yes.
And so specifically what we're actually talking about, what we mean by donor cultivation, we're trying to be fancy in our words, but really what we mean is communicating with donors.
Exactly.
Right?
That's
Just to simplify it.
Yeah.
We're communicating with donors, and how often do we communicate with donors and how do we communicate with donors tends to be a haphazard type of thing. I know, especially with nonprofits, as they have limited staff, they have limited resources, they have limited time. A lot of times you have like one or two people that are trying to do everything. And so, they're trying to do the mission, they're trying to do all the administrative work, they're trying to balance their checkbook. And they have to communicate with donors, and unfortunately,
that last one is the one that seems to drop off. The one that can be one of the most important things to us tends to be an afterthought.
Well, and the reason is because if we have money in the bank and things are good, we tend to
take it for granted.
And we tend to forget about our donors.
That's right.
And when we run out of money and we need money and things start to get a little tight, then we start thinking, oh boy, I need to reach out to some people. But that's actually one of the worst things we can do, right? You refer to that as treating people like an ATM.
Yeah, it's the transactional approach versus the transformational approach.
Right.
And we really need to have a more formal strategy and a plan for communicating with people. Because if you don't have that, you're either going to forget it or it'll just be random.
Yeah. Well, what I like about what you are going to say in this episode is coming from 38 years of working from one of the largest Christian organizations in the world called Cru. And could you tell us a little bit about Cru for some people that maybe haven't heard about it?
Absolutely. Well, Cru's been around since 1951. It was founded by Bill and Vonette Bright. Bill was a seminary student, and he had a calling of the Lord to venture out and to reach college students with the gospel. So he and his wife started at UCLA, and from there moved to Arizona State, and now are more than 2,500 campuses in the United States and worldwide. And we've got 25,000 students and staff who are involved in the movement, and we see transformation all throughout the world. And a lot of that is because we are a faith-based organization and we rely on donations from individuals who are partners with us in ministry.
Now, when I hear things like this, I tend to think of, oh, well, he sounds kind of like a Billy Graham type person. I mean, there's like little old me that nobody knows of, and then there's
Right.
people like Bill Bright and Billy Graham and
Right.
these big names, and they're
Right.
like, well, they have some kind of magic pixie dust on their shoulders that
anybody gives them money just at the drop of a hat.
or it's just like I can't even comprehend how you even make a worldwide organization.
Right,
You
right.
know, I'm struggling to just keep my
the
act
doors
together.
open or survive. Yeah.
But it's important to realize that at one point in time, he was in our shoes.
Right.
He was
Yeah.
starting.
Yes.
He started Campus
right.
Crusade.
That's
so
right.
it started with just him and his vision.
Yes.
And then he was able to take that vision and grow it to like a movement,
Yes,
a worldwide
that's
movement.
right. Yeah.
But
Well, I'll tell you, when Bill Bright started, he started just meeting with major donors. And he realized that if this organization was going to grow to the extent that he really felt it was going to, he needed to go with a different approach. And his approach was very unique and crazy in that you're asking people to come on staff, to be missionaries, and you're going to ask them to raise their own personal support. Business people thought he was crazy at the time. And now almost every major mission organization relies on individual personal solicitation. I raise my own support. My wife and I, we've done it for 38 years, and I would want no other approach to do it besides doing that. But it really takes developing a long-term relationship and a long-term perspective with our partners, which means good cultivation.
Right. So when you're talking about cultivating partners, you're not only talking about it from a nonprofit perspective, but you're also talking about it, personally as well.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
Because you have to
absolutely.
practice what you preach. You
Yeah,
can't just
yeah.
do it out in the public and then do something different.
That's right,
Get a
yeah.
nice paycheck at the end.
Yeah, it's not just for the corporation, but it's for the individual as well, too.
Right.
Yeah.
The point I was trying to make when I was saying that Bill Bright started Crew, and at one point in time, it was just a small organization
Right.
that he, started,
Right.
was that, we tend to look at these big worldwide organizations as something magical happened. We don't really know what happened.
One day they just become big.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
but we all know, like, Disney didn't become big overnight. Apple didn't become big overnight.
Right.
There was specific people.
Yeah.
There was specific strategies. There were specific things that people did
Right.
that made them become big overnight.
That's right.
And what we're going to talk about today is one of them.
Right.
It's what you call the 3-3-3 skip communication
Right.
cycle, and we're going to walk you through exactly what that is. And I'm really excited about this because a lot of nonprofits just have kind of a haphazard way of communicating with their
Right.
donors. They tend to think, oh, I'll just communicate with them whenever I feel like it, or if I remember them. But
Right.
really what this is a systematic approach to cultivating relationships. And it's done in a systematic way so that we don't forget people. We
Right.
don't, and it's done through a variety of mediums. So it hits people from different angles.
Right.
So I wouldn't mind it if we could just dive right in
Yeah.
and tell us all
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And this could be used in a wide variety of ways. You could take the 20% of your total donor base, and that brings in 80% of the dollars. Or you could just take this simply off an event. Say you had the Perfect Vision dinner, and you decided you wanted to follow up on those people and cultivate the
Right.
relationship. So you took those 20% that gave 80% of the money that night and focused in on them. So this
Right.
can be used in a wide variety of ways. The important point is that we're moving from haphazard to a formal approach.
Right.
Approach that actually may seem restrictive, but actually is going to be much more freeing for you as a nonprofit leader. Because when you get in a regular cycle, it's just like you decide that we're going to have a date night every Saturday night. You get in a cycle and it seems strange when you break that cycle. We want to do the exact same thing. We want to get in a cycle where we're communicating with our partners on a regular
Right.
basis. Now, the mediums that you mentioned, the three that I focus in on is written communication, oral or phone call
Right.
communication, and then lastly, personal visits.
Okay.
And generally what we do is we map this out on either a Google sheet or an Excel spreadsheet, and we take the 12-month cycle and we communicate with individuals. So I might have, as an example, 27 people that I'm communicating. I take 9 people and I write those people a letter in January. I call those same people in February, and then I visit them in March, and then I skip a month. That's the 333 skip. So it's one letter, one phone call, one visit, and then you skip a month. Then you start the cycle all over again.
Right.
And then you can run that through either 9 people, 18 people, 27 people, however you can graphically put that out there. But you're staying on the cycle so that you know that in this particular month, I'm going to write these people. In this particular month, I'm going to call these people. In this particular month, I'm going to visit these people.
Also, to qualify, we're not doing this with every single person who gives any single dollar amount. This is specifically how to deal with the 20%.
That critical few.
80% of your dollars.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah. And so for every organization, it's different. You know, as you can imagine, an organization like Campus Crusade for Christ, we've got a large number of people that is part of our 20%.
Right.
But if I was a pregnancy center or if I was a Christian school, those numbers will be less.
Right.
But the bottom line is that you are creating a formal structure and a formal process and strategy that you can contact those people.
Yeah. So step 1, we want to identify
who are your
critical few. And it's 20% who give 80% of your dollars.
That's right.
And so you can just simply do that by just, pulling up all your giving in the past year or two.
Right.
Right.
And
then
just rank it based on your, how much those individuals have given. And you can take your top X number 20%. Of people. Right. Exactly.
So then once you've identified those people, then we're going to plot them out on a chart.
Right. And so let's just, as I said, you'll go through whatever a manageable number is for you to do things in a month. And if we're talking about 9 people, writing 9 letters in a month, that should be a reasonable amount. And then following up with 9 phone calls to those people the next month, and then 9 visits. Now, the toughest part, of course, is the visiting.
Right.
And so to contact someone 3 times a year, if you're a local ministry, that can be tough enough, just getting on someone's schedule 3 times a year. If you are a national organization or even an international organization, to see someone in Southern California when you live in Boston, Massachusetts, 3 times a year is difficult. And we're not expecting that. You may say, it'll be great if I could even meet them 1 time a year.
Right.
That's fine.
Well, is that where the events come in?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's where, if you are doing an event in Southern California, that could be considered a second visit to see those people. Yeah.
Okay. So now, one thing that you said to me as we were preparing for this is that, you sometimes will have people on different rotating schedules. Right.
That's
so
right.
If, let's say you have 30 people.
Right.
And you divide it up into 10, 10, and 10.
That's right.
Maybe you assign 10 people to a staff member, and you assign another 10 people to another staff member, another 10 people to another staff member.
That's right.
Well, one way that you can kind of offset the responsibility is by having the first 10 start with the letters, have the second 10 start with the phone calls, and have the third 10 start with the visits.
Yeah, and that could all be in January.
Right.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And so everything is kind of, all mixed together.
Right.
It sounds a little complicated, but you said that you actually have a Google sheet
we use do, and we'll be happy to share that with people and make that available. But it really is a very simple chart to plot it out. And you can either, as a leader, you can either do it yourself, or if you've got an administrative assistant or a volunteer who can just say, Mark, Susie, here are the 9 people or 10 people that you're going to write this month. Here are 10 people that you're going to call this month. Here are 10 people. And then the next month they do the same thing with you. And that keeps you on your cycle.
Okay. So I understand like the basic idea here, but what exactly do I write about? And what exactly do I call it? Are you writing a letter, like an appeal letter, or are you writing like a ministry update letter, or are you writing a personal letter?
Yeah.
Like, hey, this is what's going on in my life?
Right.
Or like what exactly are we?
Well, remember, this is a cultivation cycle. This is not a solicitation cycle. This is more about the keeping. You know how we talk about win, keep, and lift?
Right.
This is more about keeping.
Okay.
So this is more about encouraging people. So when you're writing them, you're thanking them for their partnership, paragraph 1. Paragraph number 2, let me share with you a story of a life that was changed or a life that was impacted as a result of your gift. Paragraph 3, here's a prayer request or something that you can be praying for that we're trying to do in the future. Now, does that mean when you've got 3 paragraphs and you don't want to have 25-line paragraphs, it's got to be very, very simple, 5 to 6 lines in each paragraph. And so it's got to be succinct. So even your story of your changed life has to be succinct. But you want to generally, I am putting that on a monarch-sized sheet of paper that's a little bit bigger than a half sheet of paper, and it turned vertically, and you're sending that off from the desk of Jason Galasinski, and it's a very personalized letter signed with a signature, maybe even a note. The letter itself is generally typed, but the signature and a note can be personalized on that. Okay. And we find that works extremely well. What do we say on the phone calls? Once again, hi, Jason. This is Jim Dempsey with the Heart of Zambia. I just wanted to call and thank you so much for your partnership. It means the world to us. Let me share with you real quickly, if you have just a minute. I'd like to share with you an exciting story about Samba,
what's going on?
Who is in a local community and is a student at our school that we built. And I want you to know how much we appreciate the impact that was made in that. Is there anything I can be praying for you about in this coming couple months?
Right.
And thank you again for your partnership.
You're not
and
asking for money. They're probably thinking, okay, when's he going to ask me for money? And you don't.
Right, exactly.
So they're probably like, oh, that was nice.
Yeah.
He actually cares about me.
Right. And you may even lead out with, I'm not calling to ask for money. I just wanted to share with you how your gift has made a difference because it
we really appreciate you.
We really appreciate you. Exactly. Yeah. Now you could on one of your visits, I would never do on 3 visits. On one of your visits, you could strategically time that visit so that it is an appropriate time to ask. That would be the time when you're face to face with them to be able to do that. But remember, you don't want to take all three of your personal visits and make those a time.
Okay. So like a visit, what qualifies as a visit? Is it taking them out to lunch? Is it going golfing with them? Is it all of the above? Going for a walk? It's very casual, right?
It really is all of the above. Absolutely. And one of our most effective things that we do is we do a dove hunt once a year, and we will take some of our major donors down to West Texas in a little south of San Antonio, and we have got a large donor to our organization who owns a ranch. We will take them down there. He provides this ranch experience, this hunting experience at absolutely no cost to us. It would cost the average person $10,000 if they did this for a weekend on his ranch. Wow. We provide this to those people completely free of charge.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, some people cringe, and please, if our listeners or our viewers are cringing at the fact that we bring people to hunt, you don't necessarily have to hunt. You can enjoy the surroundings, and you could bring your camera if you wanted to do that. Yeah. But we do provide it for individuals.
The point of it is that you're doing something special for your critical few.
That's right.
To show them that you appreciate them.
And those individuals, and both men and women come on this, but we have a bunkhouse and we provide housing for them. But the real time is the connection at night, where we share stories, we share success stories of things that are happening, and we pour into their lives. We have a devotion, and we ask them for prayer requests, and some of them pour their hearts out to us, and we can minister to them that way. Many of those people come out of that weekend saying it was one of the most monumental experiences of their life, but we provide a way. But that's one experience. Having having a vision dinner could be another experience. Participating in a walkathon could be that, or going out to play golf with them, simply a twosome or a foursome out on the golf course together.
Right.
All constitutes a personal visit.
Right. And it's important to know that we're not considering these fundraising events.
That's right.
We're not actually asking them for money. So I know a lot of nonprofits will do golf outings, but they do a golf outing as a fundraiser.
That's right.
They don't do it as an appreciation.
Right.
It's a little different.
Yeah. This is just a connection time.
Right.
And one of the things, in fact, one of the things that we value highly is donor or partner engagement. And what that means is that we engage them in ministry. In the early 80s and 90s, when I cut my teeth in development, we used to bring people to ministry events and show them a ministry event, such as a winter conference for a college student where we are sharing the gospel with them. Since then, though, we have learned that the experience itself is what's most important for people. So them actually being into the activities and events. So now a lot of our events include bringing people to a college campus. The first week of school, handing out freshman survival kits, handing out Bibles, handing out Christian tapes, materials, being there on the booth with us, that those experiences are what really makes a difference in those people's lives. And of course, when the time comes to ask them for money, they've been there. And if we say we're raising money to put up a booth the first week of the year,
they know what it is.
They know exactly what it is. And they are, I'm there, sign me up. I get this all the time when I start to bring up giving people special treatment. People will say, isn't that anti-scriptural? Doesn't Scripture say we treat everyone the same? And in God's eyes, everyone is the same. But we see the model that Jesus gave us is that even though Jesus ministered to the masses, there were still 12 individuals that he pulled away with and spent extra time with them. And even amongst them, there were even a smaller group, Peter, James, and John, that he even spent more time with those individuals. So we take that model that Jesus gave us, that it can be exhausting to just constantly be with the masses. You've got to take that critical few, that 12, and then maybe even 10 from there, and pull those in and minister to those people differently. So it doesn't mean that Jesus loved the disciples any more than he loved anyone else. He loved everyone equally, but he spent more time because of the outcome that he expected from those individuals.
In a way, like Jesus was inviting his disciples to be a part of the mission.
Right.
Part of his ministry.
Right.
And, sharing those experiences really gave them that opportunity. So that's what we're trying to do with our partners. With this strategy is we're trying to invite them in. Right. To and really just care for them, and help them feel like they're a part of the ministry. It's not our ministry that we are doing, and they're just giving to me so that I can do everything. Right. We want to include them as much as we can, and that helps them to feel a lot more valued as a person. Right. And then they take more ownership. And that's how things grow.
Right. That's exactly right. Because individuals with wealth, if they understand where their money really came from, it comes from the Lord blessing them. And certain individuals were blessed with the ability to make money, and there were individuals who are blessed with wealth. And with that, just like we heard through Spider-Man early on, with great power comes great responsibility. They are blessed with that ability to make money, and in turn, they are blessed with the ability to be able to give it away and to use it for a good cause, such as helping it with your nonprofit that has an eternal value. So you're presenting people with great blessings.
So really what this is a systematic approach, right?
Yes.
And anytime that you are starting a business, any entrepreneur will tell you, there's that season where the entrepreneur is kind of doing everything himself, but then in order for the business to to move towards actually being a business,
Right.
you have to create systems and processes so that when you bring in employees to do those jobs, they know exactly what to do.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
and
right.
usually you want one person doing one task. They're not going to think the same way as a business owner.
Right.
So you have to delegate everything into simple, just one-off jobs. And that's kind of the same thing as what we're doing with this strategy here is we're setting up a system for your staff and your team to be able to write and call and meet with people.
Right.
And it's a regular thing that you do all the time.
Yeah.
And it's just part of your normal day-to-day operations of your nonprofit.
Right.
And if you build that into your system, of how you operate your nonprofit, you're going to build in, taking care of your donors,
Right.
taking care of your partners,
Right.
and, they're going to be a lot more likely to give when the opportunity presents itself.
They're aligned, they're owners, they're with you. Yeah,
Right.
Absolutely.
So Jim, tell me, we talked about Bill Bright in the past.
Yeah.
I know at one point in time, Crew was a startup. It's hard to imagine Crew as a startup.
Yeah.
But at one point in time, it was a startup.
Yeah.
And, what was there like kind of a switch that occurred where, he had to implement systems to be able to grow Crew into what it is today?
Well, when we're talking about incorporating a partner engagement system, he was one of the first leaders that I ever worked with that incorporated a very systematic process for communicating with partners. In 1987, I was tasked with the chore of creating what we referred to at the time as a president's strategy. And it was a systematic plan to get people on the phone and have Bill Bright ready to hop on as soon as a partner got on the phone. He would hop on and talk to them about the successes, how their money was being used, and to challenge them for funds to give. And that system carried over to his successor, Steve Douglas. Steve Douglas utilized a very similar system, and now Steve's successor, Steve Sellers, is utilizing another process which is exactly the same as the one that Bill Bright and Steve Douglas used. So these kinds of systems are in place and they work, and that's what successful organizations use to stay successful.
Right. And I remember when we were talking about this before the recording, you had mentioned that, Bill was so excited to get in touch with major donors that that was one of his goals. Was he knew that there was a lot of people out there that would be excited about reaching the world, about reaching campuses, but he wanted to get in touch with the people that could write $1 million check, but he went about it kind of the wrong way,
Well, I always used to joke with him that he made it sound like it was so easy to get $1 million check. And he used to strike out for years until we set up a system where we cultivated relationships to be put in the position where he could easily ask them and they would say yes for money. And he would always talk about getting those $1 million checks. And I would always say to him, yes, Bill, but there was 2 or 3 years of cultivation so that you could come in and do a spontaneous ask to them of $1 million. And he would laugh, but he knew that those systems were put in place.
Right. So a lot of it is like tilling the soil, right?
Very much.
So a lot of times when a major donor is new to the organization, it's like they're kind of a hard ground.
Yes.
And what this process does is it kind of loosens up the soil, gets them warmed up to you, so that when you do have a need and an opportunity presents itself, you can go into that loose soil. And
that's right.
They're a lot more likely.
And instead of just sending seeds out on the rocky soil, you've got it in the fertile soil.
Well, I hope that you found this podcast to be helpful. So just remember, 3 times a year, you've got 3 letters, 3 phone calls, 3 visits, and then you skip a month. All right, so 3 skips for that.
Right.
Hopefully, you found that helpful. And we also made mention of the Google Sheet we're going to make available to you. The link for that is in the description, and we'll also have it in the description for Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well. But definitely check out that because that can just help you have some examples and hopefully help you get started on the right road. And also, I wanted to mention that if this podcast was really helpful to you or you found value in it, please let us know in the comments below, like and subscribe to this YouTube channel because we release weekly podcast episodes for nonprofit leaders episodes every week, and we don't want you to miss any future ones. We got some great content coming your way. Well, thanks again for tuning in to the Fundraising Masterminds podcast, and we will see you next week.
Take care.